Ho, 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 and welcome to the World History EdX podcast special. I'm Devon, and today my co-host Nick and I will be discussing the history of one of the most important and beloved, as well as controversial holidays around the world today, Christmas. This episode is our second holiday special, and it is also the last episode in 2024 and in Season 1. Thank you for listening this far, and there will be more episodes and seasons coming in 2025. So set out the milk and the cookies below the stockings under the fireplace, and get ready for a tale that spans 2,000 years and counting. Let's begin.
What's up, Devon?
Hey, Nick.
How you doing?
Pretty good, man. It's hard to believe it's December already.
I know. Hard to believe we might be coming up on a year since I met you.
Yeah.
That's going to be in February. And then...
Since we started making this podcast, I think that was in March or April, so it's getting pretty close to a full year of podcasting.
Yeah, man. There's a lot of work that's gone into this, and thank you to anybody who's listened so far, and hopefully you guys will be along for the ride. These holiday specials are super fun because it almost feels like less pressure. So this is a history podcast, so you got to get your stuff right.
Yeah, of course.
But for some reason, it just feels a little more fun. Like Devin said in the intro, we're going to be talking about Christmas. That being said, I guess we could just jump right into it. If you guys haven't checked out the Thanksgiving episode, be sure to check that out. Devin worked really hard putting together some interesting facts about Thanksgiving that I think most people might not know right off the bat.
Yeah, lots of facts even I didn't know until I started researching it.
And there we go. That's stuff that I didn't even know the Pilgrims were like some weirdos. Anyways, Devin, where does Christmas come from?
Yeah, so Christmas is the birth of Jesus Christ, and that makes it probably one of the oldest holidays that are still celebrated today, because it goes back all the way 2,000 years ago to like to the year 08 AD or BC, depending on how you count it. It's on December 25th, but we don't actually know the exact date that Jesus was born, because there's nowhere in the Bible that says the exact dates. There's nowhere that no real evidence of any particular day. We don't even know if he was born in the winter, actually. Right. He could have been born in the summer or spring or even autumn, but we don't really know. The reason it's on December 25th is there's a Roman historian named Julius Sextus Africanus. He was alive about 2 centuries after Jesus was born. And he believed that the date of creation, which is also known as Annunciation, which was supposed to be on the spring equinox, and that's March 25th. And he took that to mean that if that was when Jesus was conceived, then nine months later was when he was born. And so fast forward 9 months, and that's December 25th.
Oh.
So that's where they got it from.
I knew there were little inklings of it being in March, but I didn't know the relation. That's actually very helpful.
Yeah, that was supposed to be when he was conceived, so fast forward 9 months, that was when he was born. So it's kind of a deductive way of looking at it. It's not an exact one.
Okay, so then you just answered my question. My question was going to be, did we even have like months in the calendar year at that time? But we did. We've had that for a very long time, right?
I believe there were months. They were just a bit different because they were the Roman months.
Right, yeah, they didn't call it December and October.
They used months of different names.
Okay.
Yeah, also, there's also some, and I'll get to the controversies around Christmas because there are plenty of those. Mm-hmm. But one of the big ones is kind of the foundation of Christmas and it being on when it is. Because it's been argued that Christmas was actually built on the same date on top of a Roman pre-Christian pagan holiday called Dies Solis Invicti Nati, or the day of birth of the unconquerable sun, because lots of cultures actually have winter solstice holidays. It's kind of it's actually much more universal than you might think, because, for example, the Iranians have Yalda Night, and that's there's a whole feast and festival. China has the Dongji festival. Before the Christians reached Scandinavia, there's actually another holiday called Yule, which, interestingly enough, they still call it Yule today. So I think that's actually one piece of evidence that Christmas just replaced the older pagan winter holidays.
I've heard that too. Yeah.
And there's also Inti Raymi, which is a Incan festival that was around before the Spanish took over, and it commemorated the sun god, also known as Inti.
Whoa. Okay.
Yeah. So it's been argued that It is built on that holiday, but it's also the winter solstice, and the winter solstice is just kind of a natural time for people to set up holidays anyway.
Wow. Okay, so hold on. So this is like we're barely at the first little point that we're making, right? That you were talking about where Christmas comes from, but already, like you say, like Christmas is just it almost seems to be the amalgamation of a lot of different like very old traditions at this time of year, right? It's already a very significant
the winter. I think it's just in the winter, especially in the pre-modern world. It was a much more harsh time than it is today in 2024. Because even for many people living out on the street, it's harsh. It's just back then it was even harsher for everyone. They didn't have any electrical heating or gas heating or any of that. So people, I think, needed some way to stay to keep their spirits up, even as the weather around them was really harsh and depressing.
Wow.
So, and that I think is why there's so many festivals just around the world around the winter solstice. Lots of partying, lots of holidays, lots of celebrations, and also the 12 days of Christmas are from December 25th to January 6th. January 6th is. Today it's known as the day of the attack on the Capitol. I didn't realize that until now.
Oh, man, come on. That didn't taint January 6th.
Yeah, but before that, and for thousands of years before that, there was actually a lesser-known Christian holiday called Epiphany, and that's supposed to be the day that the three wise men visited Jesus when he was right after he was born in Bethlehem.
Oh, okay. So that was. Oh, wow. All right.
Yeah. So that's what the 12 days of Christmas are. Until a certain man with a red hat called on people to attack the Capitol building.
Oh my gosh! I thought you were going to talk about Santa Claus, a certain man with a red hat.
There's a different man with a red hat.
Yeah. Oh my goodness.
Yeah.
Okay. So then I guess. Wow. The 12 days of Christmas. Okay. So. What was, I guess, early Christmas like? Like the very first iterations of it, I guess, as we know it, right?
Yeah, so early Christmas, and this is like during the classical and the medieval era, much rowdier and much more chaotic than anything we recognize today. And that's even when we take into account the crazy shopping season, because what was going on then blew that all out of the water. Also, it wasn't actually as emphasized back in, like, let's say the early Middle Ages or like the late Roman Empire, because Easter was the big event. It was the day of resurrection, because Jesus' birthday is certainly something to be happy about, but his resurrection is the real deal. That's what people cared about back then. But that changed because in the year 800 AD, that's right out. I think that's about 3 centuries after the fall of the official Western Roman Empire. There was the Holy Roman Empire, and their first emperor was named Charlemagne. He's a very important figure in European history, and he was crowned by the Pope, by the Pope on Christmas. So ever since then, it's become more. It became a very important day.
Yeah, just like you said, it makes it even more significant on that day.
Yeah. Another interesting point is that Christmas is actually wasn't called Christmas until the Anglo-Saxons, like the people in England, started calling it that. They called it Christ's Mass.
Oh, wow.
And that eventually turned into Christmas.
Did not know this.
Other cultures, like the French called it Noel. In Spain, it was called Navidad. In the Italians called it Natale. And the Portuguese called it Natal. And all of those things mean nativity or birth. Wow, okay. So... and also the Scandinavians, as I mentioned earlier, still call it Yule after the old pagan festival, which just kind of feels the suspicion that it's just it's kind of a syncretic holiday for them.
You might get into this. I don't want to spoil, but why do I see like I don't know some kind of European tradition, but it's like all these guys dressed up like devils or like big beasts and like not Krampus, maybe Krampus. But like they're like doing like they're like jumping around and like being kind of like crazy. Do you know what I'm talking about?
I think that actually is pagan because Krampus is a pre-Christian figure.
Oh, okay. Yeah. The reason I bring that up is because I really only start seeing stuff like that around this time of year as well.
Yeah, I think that's a pagan holdover from the old Norse traditions, and that's kind of the tricky part when it comes to Christmas because some of it I think is like specific to like the pre-Christian culture of Europe. Because if you were to go somewhere else where there's also Christianity, like Ethiopia or Armenia, I don't think this type of thing would be there because that has no real roots in their culture or society.
That makes sense.
Yeah, and But I think the core of the holiday itself is not pagan. It comes from Christianity. It's just Europeans, at the end of the day, still retained a lot of their pre-Christian culture. And you can still see elements of that, and including a few others that I'll bring up in a bit.
Okay.
So, and actually one of them is called, I think it was, there's another one called Saturnalia during the Roman period. It was this kind of inversion of society where people or poor people would kind of become like the kings, and the wealthy would become the servants, and they would invert the social roles. I think part of it was just kind of like The Purge, from like the movie The Purge, where it's like all crime is legal, and it's like it's okay to just walk around with machine guns and just go on shooting sprees.
Oh.
But because I think the theory behind The Purge, at least within their universe, was that allowing people to have this day of release will actually suppress crime throughout the rest of the year. So it's actually better to just give them one day, just go on mass looting and killing sprees and just leave the rest of the year untouched.
Oh.
But Saturnalia, I think, had some holdovers within Christmas, because there was also this tradition where the rich people, during the Christian era, would actually take poor people and then eat dinner with them, which is something they normally wouldn't do, but they just did that. And there's also this tradition called like the King of the Bean, where they would get cakes and they would hide a bean inside it, and whoever found the bean kind of became like the king of the King of the Bean. He was allowed to order other people around like they were his servants.
That's actually a funny one, because in Mexican culture that there's a very similar thing with that. Or I think around the holidays there's specific like cakes you can buy at Mexican markets, and it actually has a little plastic figurine of a baby in there. And then if you find the baby, I forgot what happens. Maybe you got to buy the cake next, or I forgot what it is, but like it's just a tradition. I've seen it and growing up, but that's very reminiscent. I wonder if they're connected at all.
Yeah, I think it probably is, because the Spanish brought many of their traditions from Europe to the New World.
I see.
And another interesting one is that poor people would dress up in costumes, and they would bring instruments and play music in front of people's houses, and they would also demand food and money. There's a song, a Christmas carol called "We Wish You a Merry Christmas." And one of the lines goes along, it sounds like, come bring us some figgy pudding, or we won't go until we get some. And that's where that line comes from, because they would actually go outside of people's houses and demand food from them while playing instruments and singing.
It's like intense Christmas caroling.
Exactly.
There you go.
Now, the interesting thing is, this is completely foreign to us today. Like, the idea that Christmas carolers would just go around demanding pudding from people is just crazy. But we actually retained a bit of that in Halloween, because it jumped holidays, because that practice just went into Halloween instead.
It sounds like Halloween and Christmas combined. Tim Burton was onto something.
Yeah, actually, maybe he was. Yeah. Also, another really interesting point that I don't think many people know is that I brought up the Puritans last time in the Thanksgiving episode, and I explained that they were considered pretty crazy even for their time.
Yes.
Even by the standards of the 1600s, which was a pre-scientific and pre-industrial and pre-liberal age.
Yeah.
Actually, I think there were still some beginnings of liberalism but it wasn't even close to being widespread back in the 1600s. But they were crazy even back then. Well, they tried to get Christmas banned in America because their view was it was unbiblical. There was nothing inside the Bible that said you had to celebrate Jesus' birthday. So they just thought that it was a Roman Catholic holiday that was invented by the Pope and his henchmen to suppress the truth. So they tried to get rid of it.
Cancel Christmas, guys.
Yeah, cancel culture was a big thing even back then.
Dude, man. What is the little kid? You've seen Nightmare Before Christmas, right?
Yeah, I've seen it.
When Jack dies or something, he goes, "There goes Christmas."
Yeah, so it was in Boston, 1659. They got Christmas banned, and it stayed banned for decades until later less radical Christians got into power and they just unbanned it.
Sweet.
Though interestingly enough, it actually declined pretty significantly around the late 1700s, early 1800s, because it was also viewed then as an English tradition, and the Americans were trying to distance themselves from England, so they actually didn't practice it very much. Also, I think this is similar to how in France, they went down a much more radical route, because the French revolutionaries weren't just they weren't calling for independence, but they did take a really hard stance against the Catholic Church and really any form of religion, because there was the French revolutionaries even tried to rename the days of the different months.
Oh wow!
Yeah, they're trying to entirely recreate society.
Yeah,
and
of course.
build it up from the ground up to be revolutionary and rational.
Wow.
So they tried to get Christmas banned too, but I think they couldn't keep it banned forever because people like Christmas.
Dude, I think everyone likes Christmas. I don't think that would fly today. Okay, so then I guess like everything you're telling me is I'm starting to see how it formed into what we have today. But when did it really become what we recognize today? Because we still have to talk about like Santa Claus. We got to talk about the North Pole. We got to talk about like giving presents. Like the Christmas trees and all that. Like when did all that have to happen? You can start before that, but do you know when it started to look like it does today?
It's really only in the 19th century, that's the 1800s, the Victorian age, especially in England and the United States, that we start to see the modern Christmas take form. Mm-hmm. Because I think, as I mentioned earlier, the earlier Puritans tried to get Christmas banned, which sounds really harsh today because, who would want to ban Christmas? But then you remember Christmas was really rowdy back then. There was all this partying. There were people getting drunk. There was feasting. There were people doing all these weird stunts. I think there was a tradition back in in medieval Europe where the priests would get their robes. And keep in mind, they're supposed to be the most holy people in society who are like supposed to set an example. So they would turn their robes inside out. They would burn shoes instead of incense. They would lead donkeys into the church, and they would make donkey noises.
What?
it was a really weird time.
Dude,
yeah.
That actually sounds pretty sick.
But as you know, the Puritans are a very stern and serious kind of people who believe in order to an unhealthy degree. So when they saw that, they thought, yeah, we have to get rid of this. This is satanic.
Man, that is bizarre.
Yeah.
Okay.
But then later Christians, like those in Victorian England, decided, well, maybe we can tone down the craziness during Christmas, and then we can still keep Christmas as a holiday because we still want to celebrate something during the winter.
Right.
Otherwise, we'd have nothing to celebrate, and it would be just really depressing for everyone.
Yeah.
So instead, and also this is just kind of a theological shift too, because the Protestants in 1800s England were very about personal responsibility and like your personal moral ethics as an individual.
That makes sense.
And it eventually shifts to Santa Claus will judge you based on how naughty or nice you were throughout the year, and he'll give you presents.
Oh, yeah, okay.
Because it took a very moralistic type of a shift. Because before that, it was just kind of just this happy time for people to go nuts and make donkey noises and look for beans inside of cakes.
Yeah, that just sounds everything not Christmassy, but it also sounds like kind of like. I feel like instead of doing it all in one time during the year, it got spread out throughout the year with different holidays now.
Yeah,
so that way we have instead of releasing everything on one day and then just having the rest of the year to just pent it all up. Now it's spread out. Wait, so you said the Victorian England, the English people from Victorian England. So Santa Claus was already a thing, a guy at that time.
I don't think he actually was all that as popular at that point because Santa Claus comes a bit later.
Oh, okay, got it.
Yeah, so what was I going to say? Yeah, so Christmas takes on a much more kind of Protestant ethos as it's a moral holiday because Santa Claus won't bring you presents if you're naughty. So you better be good throughout the year, otherwise you're only going to get cold in your stockings.
Yeah.
Yeah, so and a big reason behind this was there's an English author named Charles Dickens, and he wrote a novel called A Christmas Carol, and the story is about an old guy like that. He's rich, but he's also really mean to everyone, including his own servants. He doesn't give money to the poor. He doesn't help anyone. He doesn't care about anyone. And on one Christmas, he's visited by three spirits, and they like I think there's like the ghost of Christmas present, the ghost of Christmas past, the ghost of Christmas future, and they show him like how he's just been an awful person throughout his entire life, and how like right now he's making other people suffer because he could be giving them more money and helping them, but he's not. Yeah. So certain people now have to go hungry on Christmas thanks to him. And then they show in the future, if you keep doing this, eventually you're going to die and people are going to be happy that you're gone. And do you really want that? So
Ebenezer Scrooge. No, have you seen the Muppets A Christmas Carol? The Muppets version?
I think I've seen it at some point.
Oh, you gotta watch it. It's amazing. Like I don't know which little Muppet guy is the one that like goes, meep. Like he doesn't even talk. He just like goes meep. Maybe his name is Meep. I don't know. But he's like it's like a little like skinny guy. Scrooge has like 10 of them working, and he's like, they're just writing. And then when he walks in the door, they're like, and they just like, they all like cower. It's kind of sad. But anyways, yeah.
No, Scrooge is being mean to the
Okay,
meat.
so Scrooge wasn't a real person. I thought he was a real person.
No, he wasn't. He was just, I think he was kind of this figure created by Charles Dickens to just illustrate, I think, an ongoing problem in English society at that time, because there was a small group of people who were just getting incredibly rich and really didn't see any reason to be nice to the people underneath them. So, hey, maybe Charles Dickens had a bit of that class consciousness even back then.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. And I think that story, The Christmas Carol, is a perfect illustration of the different lens that people viewed Christmas in the Victorian age.
Very cool.
And now we get to the big man himself, Santa Claus.
Woo!
So Santa Claus...
Old Saint Nick.
Yeah, Old Saint Nick. Santa Claus was originally known as Saint Nicholas, and he was actually a Christian saint from the 4th century, so that's the 300s AD. And he was actually born in Turkey, not anywhere in Europe.
Oh, wow.
Well, what's now Turkey? Back then, Turkey was actually Greek. The Romans, the Greek Romans owned that land. They actually owned a lot of land in the Middle East before the later caliphates and Turks took over.
Whoa, so Saint Nick was Middle Eastern. I mean, technically, Greek
yeah.
He
He was born in what would be considered the Middle East today.
Wow, I did not know that. That's really cool.
Yeah, so he was Santa Claus, the character with the red robes and the hat, was a Dutch figure named Sinterklaas. That's their way of saying Santa Claus. And over time, the name Sinterklaas became anglicized to become Santa Claus, and that's also where he developed his distinctive look. There's no mention of reindeer in the Bible. I think, as you can imagine, people in the Levant and in the Middle East didn't have any reindeer.
And then they're messing around with no reindeer.
So I think that was kind of an evolution from people in Northern Europe practicing Christmas, because they just would look to what's familiar with them. And they know that Santa lives in the North Pole. So
was Sinterklaas, was he an actual person? Or was he kind of like
I think he was a mythicized version of the real Bishop of Anatolia.
Okay. I was going to say, because this sounds like two different people. We have St. Nicholas.
That being said, the Bishop of Anatolia's actual origins are kind of fuzzy. We don't know if he was actually a real person.
Do you know how St. Nicholas from Turkey became associated with Sinterklaas, right? How they all kind of became morphed?
I think it was because he was known for being very generous. There's the story where Saint Nicholas, the Greek bishop living in Anatolia, came across this family, and they were very poor. But what he did is he got money and he left it, I think, in one of their stockings. And I think that's where all the what's it called, the practice of putting stuff in gifts inside the stockings came from.
I also heard that he would put like kids would leave their shoes out.
Yes,
or something. He would put candy in their shoes.
It was either shoes or stockings, because this was all the way back in Anatolia. I don't know if they actually had socks back then.
Oh, okay. I got you.
Yeah, I would think that most people in the Middle East, probably even today, mostly wear sandals.
Got you.
It's just a lot more convenient.
Yeah.
But so this saint would put money inside the shoes. And he did that 3 nights in a row before he finally got caught. And the dad wanted to thank him for doing this, but he actually told him not to tell anyone else, because I think that was his point. He wanted to be generous without showing off.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Wow.
And what else? Also, Christmas trees are not really biblical. And
where did that go? Dude, I'm telling you, this is like the biggest gumbo of holiday traditions. Christmas.
Yeah, and that's also that's also something that developed in Northern Europe, because in the Middle Ages there were German and other Northern European Christians, and they would cut down trees around Christmas time. I think there was this whole holiday fable about a king who forgave some peasants for cutting down trees on his property, because he just felt like being an extra generous person around Christmas.
Yeah.
And that eventually became a symbol, I think, of just the goodwill, spirit of goodwill during the holiday.
Cool. That's awesome.
Yeah. Also, those types of trees grow in Northern Europe, not Southern Europe. And I think that's why it eventually became a symbol of the Protestant Reformation, because it's mostly the people in Northern Europe who are driving the Reformation. It was kind of a rebellion of the more Germanic people in the north against the more Latin people in the south.
Interesting.
Yeah. So much of Christmas is part of it's Christian. Like the foundations are Christian, but many of the holdovers and the way it's practiced are pagan. And you also got further evolutions that happened centuries after Jesus' birth and death and resurrection. And there's a lot of cultural kind of adaptation over time. It's definitely not something that just was taken right out of the Bible. There are no verses that say to leave milk and cookies out.
Yeah, but even with the lines getting blurred at this point between all these different holidays and myths and traditions and figures, growing up, and I'm pretty sure this probably isn't just a Western thing. Like, anybody who celebrates Christmas nowadays, I just kind of grew up and you're like, oh yeah, we're just gonna get a tree. It's Christmas, Or even when I was really involved with the church and you can't have idols, you can't worship any other god but Jesus. But then we bring this church in and we adorn it with decorations and we it's almost as if we're worshiping the tree. And I was like, oh, this is interesting. Why are we doing this? So. I don't know, but that reminds me, we don't have a Christmas tree yet. It's already December 11th.
Are they going to bring a Christmas tree in here at ICANN? Do you know?
There's one down in the main office. Because I can show you when we leave.
Yeah,
they might have a Christmas tree here on site. I don't know.
Yeah, we haven't gotten a Christmas tree in a very long time because I was born in Washington State, and back then every year we would get a huge tree. There's this Albertsons near our house. And they had this. I think they would actually bring in the trees from a tree farm, and we got some pretty spectacular trees. We even had this special base that had water in it to keep the tree alive for longer.
Yeah, yeah.
And we would put all these ornaments on it. It was a really great time. But after that, we moved to Florida and then to California, and there just weren't as many of those trees around. So we just haven't gotten many since.
Yeah, man. It is definitely not the environment down here for them, but.
Yeah,
I like them.
Really.
I like going in even this the calm at night, the trees lit up and everything else is dark. It's just very peaceful.
Yeah, that also reminds me of the winters that we spent in Hawaii, because my dad often took the whole family to Hawaii over the Christmas break.
Yeah,
which was nice. It's just Christmas doesn't really fit as well in the Hawaiian environment.
Oh man, so, you're Santa Claus surfing, dude.
Yeah,
no, I think it fits great.
Surfer bro Santa.
I think it's awesome. But okay. Well, anyways, that's our. Oh, you don't know anything about people hanging Christmas trees upside down and adorning them, do you? Decorating them, do you?
I've never heard of that.
There was this house. It's probably still there. That I was by my middle school, and I would walk by it every day. And in the main window of their house, typically you can see the person's Christmas tree. Everyone puts theirs right where you can see them. Theirs was upside down, and it was a really beautiful tree. It was always decorated really nice. It was a very nice house, but it was just hanging from the ceiling.
That's weird.
Maybe they were protesting.
I don't know. Maybe they were.
Maybe they're pilgrims.
Maybe some
Puritans.
Some crypto Puritans. Just
oh God.
Yeah. So of course there are also some controversies about Christmas, as you can imagine. I already went over some of them about how it's been debated over how truly Christian Christmas is with all the pagan influence. Yeah. So it's a unique holiday because it's both a cultural holiday since from ever since the 1800s America has steadily secularized. It's I think it's still a bit more on the religious side than say anywhere in Europe and in Western Europe or Canada or even other English colonies let's say Australia or New Zealand. But it is very much a secular cultural holiday too. People with all different backgrounds and faiths still celebrate Christmas. And it's also very heavily commercialized. And so from that, it can be criticized from very different sides of the political aisle.
I see.
And probably the loudest of all these are the war on Christmas people, usually I think evangelicals and other more hardline Christians, because they would argue that Christmas is supposed to be a Christian holiday first and foremost, before anything else. And the fact that it's become a lot more about Christmas Day shopping, and there have been more liberal and more inclusive ways of dealing with Happy Holidays instead of just Merry Christmas.
Yeah.
That really rubs people the wrong way, I've noticed. There are lots of people who get really angry when you say Happy Holidays.
Yeah,
Even though it's not inherently anti-anything. It's just because lots of people here celebrate many different holidays, and it's easier just to say Happy Holidays instead of Merry Christmas and Merry all the other holidays too, because I'm guessing that many of us just wouldn't know what those holidays are in the first place.
Yeah, Christmas isn't the only one that matters, guys.
Yeah, it's also just Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year, but it would also just be easier to say Happy Holidays.
What was this thing? I actually didn't see anybody getting upset about it, but apparently there was this big uproar a few years ago about Starbucks not doing the red cups one year, or Maybe Starbucks was doing red cups, and everyone's like, "Oh, it's religion." I don't remember the situation.
It's a big deal and people care about it. So I think you will have both people who get a bit butthurt over Christmas, but you also got people who don't actually care, but they just like stirring up drama. So, welcome to 2024.
Respect that. Yeah, all right.
However, Christmas can also just as easily be criticized from the left wing because it's saturated with many Christian customs, and many people on the left don't believe in any of that. And it also is, like I said before, it's a product of European and specifically Northern European Anglo-Saxon culture, and many people are trying to decolonize the holidays and take that stuff out of it. It's like when I was talking about Thanksgiving. People have taken issue to how that one holiday has been used to kind of whitewash the history of what was done to Native Americans by both the U.S. government, by settlers. Mm-hmm. So there's pushback there too.
I gotta say, I've seen. Well, first of all, I've seen you like on that note. I think there can be this idea that like the left hates Christmas and Christians for that matter, which is not true. I'm sure there's people who do. But just like everybody else, like not just people from the left, I remember seeing it's like I think it was some Soviet propaganda. I don't know if it was what it was, but it was like, or maybe it was a photograph or a painting, but it was like Stalin, and then like his kids, and then they're all like around a Christmas tree, and it was just like something sweet, like it was like a Merry Christmas, but in like the Soviet Union type of thing. But it was just like I don't know, like I it was really cool. I liked it. But and then there's also these. There's a bookstore in LA called All Power Books, and they were giving out Christmas cards, but it's like Santa, but it's actually Karl Marx. And he's like,
but he does have a beard. Though.
Oh, dude, he looks just like Santa Claus. And so, anyways, I thought that was funny.
Yeah, it's Stalin Claus instead of
there we
Santa
go.
Claus.
Oh my gosh!
Yeah, and if you're naughty, you get to dig your own coal in Siberia.
Oh my goodness!
Yeah. So what was I going? Yeah, there's that, but there's also the commercialization aspect, and that's something that I think both sides of the political aisle can oppose, because at some point Christmas becomes not a day of cheer or a day of faith, but just a day of making money, and I don't think anyone wants to see Christmas as just a way to make money. Right. I also mentioned during the Thanksgiving episode that FDR actually artificially moved Thanksgiving so that there would be a bigger window for the Christmas shopping season.
Oh, okay, that's right.
In order to just make more money, and that was really controversial. People were desperate for more money because that was during the Depression, but it was still controversial because he was messing with the holidays to make more money.
Wow.
And so yeah, there's a lot of emotional investment in Christmas, and lots of different pundits who have something to say about it.
Yeah, man. Yeah, and overall, though, okay. So just to kind of summarize, we're gonna get into takeaways right now. It almost seems that the main takeaway how do I say this? It sounds like Christmas is just this amalgamation of a ton of different traditions.
Yeah,
and
it is. It really is.
Influences from around the world to give us what we have now, which I think is pretty sweet that we're still doing this. Like not many thousands, but thousands of years later, essentially.
Yeah,
right?
Yeah, it's insane how old this tradition is, because especially compared to the other holidays in America, like let's say 4th of July or Thanksgiving or what's another one? I think Easter is the only one that's also as old because it showed up at the same time as Christmas. There's the birth, and then there's the death, and there's the resurrection, and all those were roughly 2,000 years ago.
Oh, I cannot wait for the
4th
Easter
of July,
episode.
that's less than 300 years ago. The Thanksgiving is less than 400 years ago. They're still very recent compared to thousands of years ago.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that is what Christmas is. It's a cultural mountain. There aren't many holidays like it anywhere in the world. And, compared to all the other holidays in America, like Thanksgiving or 4th of July, Easter, Halloween, or even New Year's, nothing else provokes the same level of controversy or emotional reaction to Christmas, because people care about it more than anything else.
Absolutely.
And what's also interesting is Christmas probably has the widest reaches of all the holidays outside of New Year's, which is kind of universal, just because everyone's New Year begins on the same day. But because Christianity is so widespread, and because American secular culture is so widespread, it's everywhere.
Yeah.
You can't really get away from Christmas. There are countries that don't even have a Christian majority, like Japan or South Korea, that still celebrate Christmas because of just how powerful the U.S. and its soft power is.
Wow.
And I think it's also a great illustration of how traditions form over the centuries, because you got conventions like the Christmas being celebrated on December 25th, which has nothing to do with anything in the Bible. And you got the gift giving, which I think developed independently because many holidays just develop gift giving over time. I don't think it's specific to any particular culture.
Okay.
And you also got the Santa Claus and the Christmas trees, which are also not really biblical. And it just shows that over time, these customs just get added, and progressively it just starts to grow into something else, something very different from how it originally was.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, and also it's kind of an illustration of partisanship in the U.S. because pundits or people who just want to stir up drama can just point at Christmas and just use it to make some kind of cheap point online.
Man.
And yeah, so because Christmas has been attacked both for being too Christian and for being not Christian enough, and I suppose that's just kind of the paradox of Christmas. Everyone has an opinion about it,
Man.
and everyone seems to care a lot about Christmas, even if even if it's for completely different reasons.
Yeah. It's and it's especially it's a sentimental time of year too. Like you're saying, and nothing else really invokes this much emotion, or like our lives are affected by it. Like I'm going to be off work for a couple days. The economy is going to change. Like it's a very monumental thing. And not only that, this can maybe signify very good times or bad times for people based on their own lived experiences. The holidays can be rough for some people.
Yeah,
a lot of people, I'd say.
Because I think for me, Christmas is the biggest symbol of the good times. Because every Christmas I had back when I was really young was a good time. Because we got
same.
presents. And that was back in the days when I think every child still believed that Santa was real.
Yeah.
Like a literally real figure. I remember this one night I actually stayed up and I tried to wait for Santa until I got too tired and I went back to sleep.
Yeah, man.
Yeah, because it was a time when the world was still filled with lots of wonder. When you're a child and you basically don't understand anything about the world around you, it can be scary, but it can also be incredible because your imagination fills in the blanks of all the amazing things that could be.
Yeah, and you're not thinking about everything from a critical lens, and you're just kind of existing.
It's before the cynicism and the pessimism and the nihilism starts to set in, and you just kind of see life as just this drudgery to just kind of march through and get it over with.
Yeah, man.
Children don't see the world that way, and I think every time someone sees, or like every time I see a Christmas tree, I get brought back to that time.
Yeah,
when the world was a much simpler place and also a much more wondrous place too.
You're absolutely right. I think it's important to our based on how your life is going, like you can for sure lose that sense of wonder, and you can become, like you said, life can almost feel like a chore, and you're just going through the drudgery of it.
You just turn into a Scrooge.
No, but like not at the risk of sounding cheesy or cringe, like it would, at least for myself, I'm trying to get that sense of wonder back, that childlike sense of wonder.
Yeah, I think
I find it a lot. This is not kind of unrelated, but I find it a lot in reading like fantasy books and like just doing things that I genuinely love and like exploring and by doing that, I don't know, you kind of revisit it. But anyways, maybe that's what they call the Christmas spirit.
Exactly.
And maybe that's why you should get into it.
Yeah, that's the real present of Christmas, I think, just being brought back to the days when all these problems that you have to deal with as an adult just weren't there, and you couldn't even comprehend them because, as a child, ideas of things like paying taxes or like working a job, all that doesn't even exist. Children have problems, but in retrospect, they're not as crazy as what we have to deal with now.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Yeah. Well, thanks, Devin. Thanks for the outline. We wish all of you guys a very Merry Christmas.
Yeah.
Happy holidays. Whatever you celebrate, whatever you don't celebrate, it's all good. Thanks for checking it out. Devin, you got any last words?
Merry Christmas, everyone, and a Happy New Year.
Thanks, guys. Bye.
Thank you for listening. You can follow us at the World History Addicts Podcast Instagram page for more episodes and releases. this is the end of season 1, and we hope to see you again in season 2 in 2025. Thanks again, and Merry Christmas.